Hello, ladies and gentlemen, metalheads all over the world that might be watching on this day, and welcome back to episode 84 of the Horsemen Podcast. Yeah, 3 episodes in 1 month. That's got to be a record, but I'm not here to brag. And today we have another special guest for this week. We are talking to the one and only Jesper Gras from Iotunn. And yeah,
Perfect.
this is
Yeah.
going to be an awesome conversation considering a lot of you guys who have been watching this channel know I've been obsessed with the new album Kinship, and now I'm going to get to pick the brain of one of the masterminds behind the band. So, Jesper, how are you, good sir?
I'm very fine. Thank you. And thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, no problem. And again, we just keep adding to the list of great guests we've had on this show in the past. Like our very first guest was Daniel DK from Exciter, who's still one of my closest friends to this day. Hope he's
Mhm.
doing well out in Europe touring with, I think he's touring with Power Trip. I'm not sure. And then, of course, we had James McBain from Hellripper twice. We've had quite a few members from my boys from Norway, Blood Red Throne, on here. We've had
Oh,
Dylan Gowan from Vesperia, Malice Divine, and now Seven Spires a couple of times. We've had, and still probably our biggest guest we've had thus far is Dan Swano,
yeah, he's a
which
legend.
absolutely, and I still to this day I don't know what to say.
No.
Let me
Amazing.
remember who else. Jeremy Wagner from Broken Hope, which that was a bucket list one for me. And then as recently, we've had actually last week we had Sebastian Romstead from Necrophobic.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it's just keeps growing, and now we have another
That's
legend
perfect.
on our hands.
Thank you. I
So
think we have to release a couple of albums more before the legend.
well, I'd say.
But
I mean, I'd say the fact you're on Metal Blade makes you pretty legendary already.
thank you. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, Brian Slagle, if you somehow see this, God bless you for picking up these guys.
Yeah, and yeah, and thank you from Iotunn as well.
Yep. So, excuse me. So, to kind of get all this going, like as if we're just talking shop at a show or whatever, because that's how we usually always treat these guest appearances, is like as if, hey, we're backstage at a gig, and it's like, hey, what you up to, and all this stuff. But I kind of wanted to start off kind of the same way we start off with every guest we have, and that's all about the origin story of the guest in question in terms of how they discovered music and then eventually in the metal and then all that good stuff. So, where did the origin of Jesper Gras come from when it came to music?
Oh, that's a big one. I think some of the most important and first memories I have is metal music and it's classical music. And I play with my older brother in Iotunn, and he's almost 5 years older than me. And he began to listen to metal when he was 8 or something. So the very, very first memories I have from childhood is him coming back home with cassette tapes with Metallica Black Album and so on. So I actually remember sitting on my mother's lap going like this, and he comes. I can still see him like totally thrilled with this tape and puts I think it was Sad But True on, and I can remember that intro, dun, da, 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 doof, and just being not afraid of that wall of sound, but in some way totally fascinated by how the greatness of that sound. So metal was from the very beginning defining for me. And classical music was my grandparents, where we were a lot as children, and we always got presented to a lot of different classical music when we were at their home. And I absolutely loved classical music as a child as well. And then you have like I have a couple of uncles who are like very into folk music and 60s, 70s rock. and that also defined me a lot, you know. I had a couple of years in my childhood where I had a really, really bad taste in music, like a Deroot, but I got back. So yeah, that's and I began to play guitar already as I think I was 9 years old. So and that was classical guitar. So a lot of
Oh.
classical music and metal and rock and folk and so on. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we always ask about like the origins because, like, everybody's always got a different starting point when it came to everything. Like for me, started with parents listening to classic rock on the radio, so I got exposed early on to like AC/DC, Van Halen,
yeah,
CCR, Steve Miller Band, even Black Sabbath to a degree at the beginning. Then it was my older brothers, and it was basically the same thing. Metallica was the big
yeah.
band that really got me, and they still remain my favorite band to this day. That will never
Same.
change.
No,
Thank you,
no,
thank
never,
you.
never change.
Never change.
Why,
But
why, why, why change?
exactly. I mean, yeah, you always find great bands to follow, absolutely, but you can't ever forget where you came from.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah, and then of
Yeah,
course, like you said, yeah, basically with a lot of family. Whereas with me, not so much. Like I kind of had to discover a lot of stuff on my own.
yeah.
And initially, it was through my love of both video games and professional wrestling because heavy
Oh
metal
yeah,
and pro wrestling kind of go hand in hand like
yeah,
chocolate and
yeah,
peanut butter.
yeah, yeah.
So I got exposed to like Motorhead through pro wrestling. And then, of course,
Of course.
as I got older, got more into classic metal. So like Priest, Maiden, Sabbath, and then thrash, and then eventually into death metal. And it just kept growing. So that's
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
short version of my little origin story.
Awesome.
But when it came to guitars, who would you say? And I asked this to Sebastian last week about some of the guitar heroes that really shaped your playing and stuff. Who were some of the big guitar heroes that really shaped your playing style?
Let's start with Kirk Hammett and James Hetfield, of course. And that's
Yes.
that's that's not just as a solo player, but also as how to compose lead pieces on the guitar or how to compose riffs and finger pieces as well, which Metallica does very like in the sense of classical guitar music, you know. Uh, but there never comes the finger piece there in the verses, for example. It's just excellent.
Yeah.
Um, and then I have a lot of heroes from the 60s, 70s band. Black Sabbath, Tony Iommi is a huge hero of mine, and Jimmy Page is David Gilmour, Blackmore, you know, Tipton, everyone. And I think all guitarists in Iron Maiden plays a huge role for me, but Murray has somehow always been my
Been the
just
constant.
just just the favorite with a tiny bit, you know. There's something about not just his, it's as I just love his energy, you know. There's some kind of energy to him that is also in his guitar playing that is just, oh yeah, my heart melts when I hear that. So a lot of Maiden, of course, Van Halen also, and a lot of different guitarists in the whole more extreme metal scene. But I think the most defining ones for me is also Brent Hinds from Mastodon. I really,
Oh
really,
yes.
really love his work as well. Um, yeah, just an enormous amount of guitarists, but of course the foundation for me is also the foundation music history wise in some way. So it's the big ones from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. That's somehow the most important ones for me.
Yeah, I mean, like I always say when it comes to Hetfield, like I feel like, because obviously, like, especially amongst like the metal elitists out there. They always want to discredit Metallica, no matter how great they are. They always want to discredit them. But I think that a lot of people can probably agree that when it came to writing memorable riffs, it's always like Tony Iommi and James Hetfield are like the two defining riff writers, you could say, in metal history. And also like Mustaine, Dimebag.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, when it comes to like,
Mustaine and Dimebag, legends.
absolutely.
Okerfeldt from Opeth is also a guitarist on,
Yes.
of
Yes.
course. So, but yeah, I mean, why spend your energy writing something negative about something that has spent decades to contribute with mostly great music, and spreading heavy metal and rock. That's still a mystery to me, to be honest. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's always going to be a taste thing, obviously. And you
of
know what's
course.
funny? And you know what's funny? Like, I know James from Hellripper.
Yeah,
He's had this conversation with a lot of people when it comes to Metallica. I feel like you and him would get along very swimmingly when talking Metallica. Like, oh yeah, Jack, you love the house that Jack built, that bluesy riff in there. It's
yeah.
like,
That's a
yeah,
good
I think
song.
I think that would be kind of a funny conversation to be had. But so
And he's a very, very interesting. I have to go through all of Hellripper's albums. I only heard one really well and one and a half in that way, and I think it's really great music.
and the fact that he's doing everything
Yeah,
himself
that's
and recording
insane.
everything himself, that's
And that must be a lot. Yeah.
yeah, and
Uh,
and I think right now he's working on album number 4, which
yeah,
I can't wait to hear what how that's going to be. But
yeah.
so moving on to when it comes to metal in Denmark,
Yeah,
it's like when compared to the other countries in Scandinavia when it comes to metal, it's like definitely Denmark seems to be not as big as say Sweden, Norway, or even Finland, but like there's been a lot of great bands come out of
yeah,
Denmark. Probably the biggest one being Merciful Fate,
of course.
obviously,
Yeah, and
and
talking about guitarists, we have
yes,
to have both, the whole history of Merciful Fate and King Diamond
yes.
brought into this about the big guitar heroes. Yeah,
Yeah, Michael and Hank, that
yeah,
I would say arguably the most underrated duo of all time.
yeah. But I see what you mean. But still, everywhere I travel and go, everyone sees them as guitar gods. So
Yeah. Yeah, I always think of them being like a musician's influence, whereas like perhaps there's just not as many fans who would be as familiar with Hank and Michael's work. But yeah, it's like definitely a musician's band or guitars and such.
yeah.
But of course, Iotunn being now one of my new favorites from over there. And then and it's like, yeah, there's always like with Denmark, it's just like I said, perhaps not as prevalent as Norway and Sweden, but definitely have their own toehold on the scene, like even in thrash with bands like Artillery, for example, just kind of ripping it out at the end of the 80s and early 90s. But what I wanted to ask is like
Yeah.
going back to when Iotunn started. I think when did you guys start? Like 2013?
We named the band Iotunn in 14, 15, but we had
Okay,
we had some formation years before then.
all right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So going back to the early days of Iotunn,
Yeah.
like because I go onto the metal archives all the time to do my research on a lot of bands, and that's how I've discovered many bands. Despite, and I brought this up last week with Sebastian, despite the questionable rules, quote unquote, these admins have for who makes it and who doesn't. Like, I still don't understand why Between the Buried and Me is not on there, but I digress. Otherwise, I'll be here forever. But whatever.
Yeah.
But going on to when I was looking up info for Kinship and looking at all the previous works of you guys, including the debut Access All Worlds, and seeing the Wizard Falls EP from 2016, and definitely I haven't got to listen to that EP yet, but judging from what they have listed, that they describe you guys as kind of almost power metal-esque in the beginning.
Yeah, I think
So
it's more the dose, if you can say that,
mhm.
of power, and perhaps also I would mention fresh metal, uh, quite high on some of those tracks. But yeah, check it out.
Yeah, I know I will. But talking about like whenever things transitioned over for the band when Jon came in on vocals, because I know you guys had Benjamin Jensen on bass and
Yeah.
vocals on that EP, and then going to Jon from Barren Earth. So, what was it like whenever you first met or talked to Jon, and how he got to be involved with Iotunn in 2018?
Yeah, the way I knew about Jon was his work with the Ferries band called Hamfer. And I had seen them a couple of times in Copenhagen playing live, and
Mm-hmm.
really loved his vocals. And we parted ways with Benjamin in, yeah, time flies, I think 17. And then we had I think half a year or something where we tried different singers, and Yeon just kept up coming to my mind. And eventually I said to the other guys in that, well, shouldn't we just reach out to him, you know? And we did, and we sent him some demos of actually some of the songs that turned out to be a part of Exasol Worlds. I think we sent the Tower of Cosmic Nihility, and the Weaver System, and Safe Across the Endless Night, those three or something. And he wrote back to me that he was way too busy scheduled in his life, but he couldn't turn this down. So yes, I'm in. And then I think 3, 4 months later, he flew to Copenhagen before going with Baroneth. I actually think to play in Finland or something. But we just sat down for 3 hours or something and talked like all the perspectives through, practical stuff, uh, and visions for the music and so on. And then 3, 4 months after that meeting, we began to work on Access All Worlds, and that was
Awesome.
back in 2019, I think. Yeah.
Oh, time flies. Holy
Oh
crap.
yes. Yeah. So yeah, but the to have Yeon join the band, both like with the scope of music, but also like for us as people, the whole social aspect to our band with Yeon and Eskil, and the three of us, Björn, my brother, and I, just it just works perfectly. It's really good.
Yeah, it definitely sounds on record like it goes very well, obviously,
Awesome.
and I mean with with John's vocals, like whenever I listen to his
Yeah.
stuff, especially on Kinship, like I was mesmerized when I think the first song I heard was Mistland, the
Ah, nice.
Jens Bogren mix that
Yeah,
came out
yeah,
in 2023, whereas
yeah.
the new mix with Jacob Hansen. But actually, I forgot to mention, yeah, Jacob Hansen being a big figurehead in the whole Danish scene. Completely forgot about
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
But
Invocator.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Maceration early on.
Oh, yeah, 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 exactly.
But but yeah, whenever I heard Mistland and like just everything about it, it was like it just clicked in my head that day
Awesome.
many months ago when I heard Mistland for the first time, like hearing the wonderful melodies with you and Jens doing on the guitars, the awesome drumming from Bjorn, and then John's vocals just going insane with his range, like going from like mid to like two power metal levels of
Yeah.
excellence, especially in the chorus. Like I would say, and I've said this quite a few times, whether on videos or on other people's live streams where we're talking music, I keep saying I think the strongest chorus of any song in the past year is Mistland, just because
Awesome.
those riffs and Jon's vocals just carrying the story along with the guitars and
Yeah.
the rhythm section. I'm just like, how did you guys pull this off? Because
It's funny.
I was just like, what has happened to my mind?
Yeah. To be honest, just plain honesty here, it's both when I wrote the riffing for that chorus, and I remember doing it at my brother's home place, and when I wrote that lead part, it just came to me, there was no brain behind it. It was just like, oh yes, wow, that sounds fucking awesome. And when Jon put his vocals on, I still to this day, if I hear that chorus making something on social media with us or something, or when we play it live or something, I still get the chills.
Mm-hmm.
That's something about that chorus for me as well that just clicks.
Yeah.
So yeah, glad you like it as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, just and like there were moments, like especially in like the pre-chorus, where Jon almost reminds me of Alan from Primordial whenever he's doing his
Yeah,
cleans from time to time
yeah.
on Primordial songs. And I was thinking, did the soul of Alan get sucked into Jon's body on this part? I was just like, this sounds so uncanny, but I mean, just
I
everything about that song, it was just like it made me a big fan immediately.
glad to hear. And you mentioning Primordial is also very relevant to not only me but to the whole band and our sound. I've been a Primordial fan for many years, and I really love the aura in their songs. That
Mm-hmm.
that 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 very special blender of darkness and light in their sound is phenomenal. Yeah.
and
So,
that Celtic folk element on
oh
top
yeah,
too,
yeah,
which that definitely adds a lot to it as well.
absolutely.
Now, one other song that's really kind of stuck to my heart recently, and now to this day, I almost cry. I do kind of
Hmm.
cry when I listen to it, which is Iridescent Way.
Wow.
That
Yeah.
is probably in terms of like, if I had to make up a top 10 list of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard, that would be a strong contender just because
Amazing.
you and Yin's together on the acoustics and classical guitars and Jon's voice just going again in all sorts of directions, but that soothing, low, tuneful, kind of soulful singing. And then
Yeah.
even in the chorus where he gets a little higher, there he kind of reminded me a lot of Roy Khan from Camelot quite a good
Yeah.
bit. I'm just thinking
I
like,
know, Roy Khan is a one of Jon's huge heroes. So he would be glad, I think. Yeah.
oh yeah, because like, and this is coming from a guy who's not listened to a whole lot of Camelot with Roy, apart from a few songs in the past, like March of Mephisto being probably the big one. But yeah, like I was seeing people make this make this statement, and then I was thinking back to Roy's vocals, and then I hear back on Iridescent Way, and I'm like, yeah, that is a good comparison point for sure, just because
Yeah.
of the emotional weight of not only with his voice but also the guitars and the whole atmosphere of it, and also even reading the lyrics too. And I guess part of the reason why it kind of gets me emotionally is because it made me think of my oldest brother who passed away almost 10 years
Oh,
ago.
sorry to hear.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, it kind of made me think about that a little bit, especially the emotional weight of everything. And ooh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
kind of feeling it a little bit now. I'm trying to hold it, but I think I'm good now. But
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it's such a wonderfully crafted song that to this day, whenever I listen to it, I can't help but get misty eyed every single time. And there's not a whole lot of songs that do that to me. So I'm glad that that's one of them at the very least.
Me too.
But now going back to the first album, so Access All Worlds. So yeah, like a bunch of my fellow YouTube friends, like Necrotic Nick from Thralls of Metal, was hyping this album up quite a bit. And obviously, like I looked you guys up on Metal Archives many times, and I'm thinking,
Yeah,
man, I really need to give this band a shot. I really need to give this band a shot. And it just wasn't until here in Mistland and then the new album that it all finally registered. But uh, I would say in terms of like the scope, like I wouldn't say it's like a night and day difference. It's mainly in the production. Like obviously, you guys worked with the one and only Frederick Nordstrom
oh
on
yeah,
Access All Worlds, and then here, well, I mean, you did the first mix of Mistland with the other legendary producer of
yes,
Sweden, Jens Bogren, and
yeah,
then for the whole thing, working with another legend in Jacob Hansen. So
yeah.
I would say to certain extents, the new album is like more melodic, but at the same time, heavier, especially on
Yeah.
the song Earth to Sky. Like, I would say that's probably the most evil sounding song you guys had. So, how did that song come together in particular?
Earth to Sky.
Yeah.
The first thing that was written for that one, it's always my brother and I who starts the compositions of our
Mm-hmm.
songs. Was the finger pieces in the intro, which you also find in the mid sections with all those guitar melodies on,
Mm-hmm.
and then I wrote that. And then I remember saying to my brother, okay, these finger pieces and the chords that they consist of, can you somehow work on with those and kind of create a whole body of a song with those? And he did the whole like the song parts, you know, the verse, chorus, guitar stuff. And then we sat together and tried to like come up with a draft for the whole song. And I remember we were together when we decided that the midsection of the song should build on those intro pieces that I had written. And then I said to him, I had to, I can't remember what, but I had to go away for 15, 20 minutes. And I just, for fun, said to him, when I come back, then you have the leads for the whole midsections. And when I got back, he like note for note had written what's on the album now, and I was just like, okay, that's going on the album. And then yeah, then we finished the song, and I think just a couple of months before entering the studio with Jacob Hansen, my brother was like, ah, that's just there's something missing to the song. There's some ingredients that like that magic ingredients that just takes the whole song just up a notch, you know. And that's this part where Jon has this third verse where he sings like this brutal but still clean vocals,
Mm-hmm.
and it lands down in a instrumental piece before going into the last chorus. That instrumental piece there, my brother wrote that just a couple of months before going into the studio, and I was like, okay, let's do it. And then and that's actually one of my absolutely like talking about those transitions. How do you land in the next, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the feeling of landing in the Mistland chorus, it's just there, it clicks. And I think that feeling when you land in that instrumental piece after the third verse in After Sky is just like, you know,
Just
the
like musically punches you right in the mouth.
absolutely. So something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because that song definitely stands out on the album because correct me if I'm wrong, was the whole
Yeah.
album apart from that song in standard tuning?
Everything is standard tuning, and then you have, let me think. King's Jubilee Jack standard tuning, Mistland is, Twilight is, I Feel the Night is in drop D. but standard tuning.
Yeah.
And then you have coming in is that's drop D as well.
Hmm.
And then you have iridescent way, that's standard, Earth to Sky standard, and the Anguished Ethereal is standard.
Oh wow. I would have guessed with Earth to Sky it sounded like it was in C because like I said, it just
Yeah,
has
but
that like darker, more sinister sound that C
yeah,
tuning has.
but that's because we're using the seventh deep string
Oh.
in some of the pieces. That's very like if we want to build the wall bigger and deeper and darker, we add that to the whole like chorus element of the riffing because
Huh.
that's just woof, you know.
Learn something new every day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that is actually kind of mind blowing. Just because, like, I so absolutely assume. I think I might have said it in the review. It sounded like it was in C tuning or drop C because, like I said, I don't know. I always gravitate towards like the more evil sounding guitar tunings, like E flat and C drop C, just because like there have been so many bands that have used those tunings. It just makes everything sound more evil. Like Slayer would be one of the kings of E flat because you listen to something like Hell Awaits or
Yeah,
Rain of
yeah.
Blood, and it just has that sinister sound to the guitars, which I always appreciate. But yeah,
I I can't
people even
remember
with the sounds.
which tune. Yeah, but I think we've done some material back. I think actually just before the yeah a couple of years before we began to work on the material for Access All Worlds, we tried deeper tuning actually, but I could just feel that I wanted us to be able to manage the feeling of the dark vibe in the tone in the standard tuning. Um, so that yeah, we went that way, and we actually want to. We're working on the next album now. Uh, my brother and I, and slowly also Björn actually. But one of the songs there, I think, if I remember, will be a bit lower in the overall tuning. So that's something new. Yeah,
That's going to definitely be an experiment for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Because, like the great Andreas Kisser from Sepultura once said, "You don't have to tune low to be heavy,"
No,
which is ironic considering he did start tuning lower, starting with Chaos
yeah,
AD
yeah.
all the way to now. So
But
it's just
he,
kind of funny.
he's still right.
Very true. I mean,
Yeah,
like, yeah, standard tuning's always been like a go-to for me as well. I don't
yeah.
know, like most, like pretty much almost every guitar tuning I've ever listened to, I've always liked. Well, for a long time, it took me a while to get into like I think it's B flat, like right in between B and A. It took me a while to kind of get behind that tuning until I would listen to like Morbid Angel and
yeah,
Meshuggah and bands like
yeah.
that would play in that
But
sound.
that's
So it's
also, I think you have to make the decision about your tuning from what's your the essence of your music and sound. What is it? You know,
oh yeah,
it should be connected there, I think. And that tuning for Meshuggah and Morbid Angel is just, it makes sense
yeah. Which
musically.
which actually speaking of Meshuggah, I said that because I noticed you were rocking a Meshuggah shirt.
Yeah, yeah,
And funny enough, when it comes to Meshuggah, like for the longest time, I couldn't get into them. I don't know what it was. I guess it's my ignorance, even though I'm only 30, so I'm
yeah,
still a youngin'. But I feel like I'm a far more old school guy in general than people my
yeah.
age, which makes me feel like, or as my friend Scott, who I kind of call my metal dad because he could be my dad for all I
Yeah.
know. He he one time did his pro wrestling Terry Funk impression saying, "You are a bitter young bastard." And I feel that way sometimes. I do feel that way sometimes whenever I'm trying to get into some of these bands that like the popular realm of metal really like Meshuggah. Like for the longest time, I couldn't get into him, and I think the reason was because of the whole labeling of gent. which I've
Yeah, but
always said,
that's labeling in general, I think, is difficult and
yeah, especially
problematic in many
yeah,
ways.
especially with bands like Meshuggah, where
Yeah,
I've often said I don't consider gent to be an actual subgenre. All to
yeah,
me, it's just prog metal with 8 string guitars.
yeah.
That's pretty much it.
And
But
it's weird to put one word to Meshuggah's sound. That's just weird, I think.
yeah, just weird. Just call
Yeah.
them weird or or the what Meshuggah means,
Too
crazy.
yeah, too simplistic. Yeah.
Somehow, some way, but yet it works. But yeah, it's only been in recent times that I really got into Meshuggah. And funny enough, it goes back to my friends from Thralls of Metal, who are basically like Northern Ohio's masterminds of metal in terms of like being fans. Like I kind of
Yeah,
call them
yeah.
like family to
Awesome.
me.
Yeah.
But I watched them do a Meshuggah ranking and then seeing how much they loved Meshuggah, it's like, okay, it's time for me. It's time for me
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
my bitter young bastardness out of my mind and
Yeah.
actually give them a shot. And now I have almost all their catalog in
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
collection. But just for shits and giggles,
Yeah.
because why the hell not? But when it comes to Meshuggah, like, what's the top song on your playlist when it comes to Meshuggah? And then what would be the one song? Like, if you guys ever, I don't know if this would ever happen. If you guys ever did a Meshuggah cover song, what would that song be?
Oh, the Sugar cover song.
That would be tough.
Yeah, that would be tough, but I think I would end up choosing something from Destroy, Erase, Improve,
Yes.
or Nothing.
Yeah.
I think it was like half a year or something in high school where I fell asleep to the Nothing album, which is I'm 36 today, and if I put that on before going to sleep, I would never fall asleep, you know. So it's today to me it's a mystery, but I know it's kind of an obvious choice, but Future Breed Machine would be a choice for me, I think.
Yeah, that's
Just
especially
just
especially that breakdown.
yeah.
Ugh.
I think, but yeah, it would be from those two albums, I think, for me. But Chaos Free, I listen to a lot also, and of course Clockworks, and a lot of the new stuff is also very great. But I had my like fan peak with Meshuggah at those two albums,
I was
and
gonna say, oh, go ahead.
no, yeah,
Oh, I
fine.
was gonna say, probably the one Meshuggah song that like really sticks out in my mind just because of how different it is. Ritual off of None.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
because, like, well, back when I was first diving further on into Meshuggah, like I had listened to Immutable and Violent Sleep of Reason when they came out, but never listened to their whole catalog until late last year. But when I came across the Nun EP, which it cost me a little bit of money off Discogs to get on CD, but it was totally worth it because it's become one of my new favorite EPs. But the song Ritual, like when I was first listening to it on YouTube, reading comments and people were saying, "Man, this sounds like a more heavy prog version of Alice in Chains would," and I was like, "Okay, I'm
yeah.
sold. I am
Let's go.
sold on that since Alice in Chains is one of my favorites of all time too."
Yeah, nice.
So whenever I listen to Ritual, it's like that comparison makes sense.
Wow.
It definitely
I
does
have
sound
to
like it definitely does
yeah.
sound like a like if you took Metallica and Pantera and they wrote Alice in Chains songs together, that's Ritual.
That's
And
ritual.
also, and the only song to my knowledge Jens Kidman does clean vocals on, and they're really good.
Yeah, that's true.
Which,
And they
given that he does have a really good clean voice, and also he reminds me a lot of Hetfield quite a bit. I'm
yeah.
shocked he doesn't do that often because
Yeah,
yeah,
they could do that
he's got
more.
a good clean voice to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, we all love the insane yelling he does, which
Absolutely.
never changed on that. But that could have been a song I could have maybe seen you guys cover. Although
Yeah,
I don't know
Region.
how. Yeah, I don't know how Jon would have fare when it. I'd say he probably fared very damn well on doing the Kidman vocals, but also the
I
clean.
I haven't stumbled into anything, if he tries to imitate the people. He does a crazy good Hell Thought, and he just does a crazy good King Diamond as well, and so on.
Now that I would love to hear.
So so yeah, probably would work out.
Yeah, just because like there's more melody on that, and then also that those final chugs at the end of that song, it's like it's just my primal cavemanness in me just comes out when that
Yeah,
song comes to an end with them freaking nasty chugs. But and then so yeah, you got on Meshuggah and I'm rocking some Nile.
and that's also amazing. I haven't heard their new album yet, but looking
Oh,
forward.
it's I'd say the best album they've done since Annihilation of the Wicked or Iffy Phallic.
Yeah,
Wow.
I have
And
to
that
listen to it
lineup
soon.
having three guitarists now with Carl, Brian, and now having Zach from Olkoff, which Olkoff
Oh,
that's a newer band that's been going for I think they had their first album come out a couple of years ago. They're kind of like
yeah, okay.
Nile. They're like Nile with a tiny hint of black metal in there too.
Oh,
Yeah, they're really good, and they're also from South Carolina, just like Nile. So it's like, hey, we're like the young
yeah,
demented child of Nile, which is really funny. I like to use those. Uh, I don't know how you call it, like turn of phrases when it comes to describing bands. Like I like Ulcerate. We were talking Ulcerate a little bit ago about how
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
listen to the new one. I always say Ulcerate sounds like the demented child of bands like Gorguts, Immolation, Neurosis, and Deathspell Omega all into one.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like,
And that
how
makes
the
sense.
hell? It, and that's the and I think everybody can agree when it comes to Ulcerate. It's like, how do they manage to make these insane, at times brutal, and other times evil, dissonant riffs sound
Yeah,
catchy?
yeah,
Because to
exactly.
me, that just sounds like the most impossible thing to do. Because when it comes to dissonant death metal, it's you're hard pressed to find stuff that's catchy apart from
Yeah,
Ulcerate and The Godfather's Immolation.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Totally
yeah,
agree.
um, but yeah, with me and Nile, I don't know. There was just even though like when it comes to like technical death metal, I'm very picky about that subsect of the genre because it gets a bad rep for being nothing but to put it lightly, guitar masturbation, where it's like, hey, look how
Yeah,
many
yeah,
sweeps I can do, and it's like, okay, we get it, you're an awesome player, but could you
yeah,
calm down a little bit? Let's get to some riffs and stuff. Which, yeah, there's quite a bit of bands, quite a few bands that kind of fall into that realm a little too much for me. But thankfully, there's plethora of tech death bands that balance it with either brutality or progressive melodies or just flat
yeah,
out being complex and not in a wanking
yeah,
sense.
yeah, and
And I'd say Niles definitely, in my opinion, when it comes to technical death metal, the band, just
yeah,
because it's
that's
like
it's
they can play
insane.
as fast and insane as anybody else, but man, when they can get into like doomy territory or like brutal death territory, or
Yeah,
hell,
yeah,
just
yeah,
getting flat out melodic,
yeah.
They know how to pull it off,
They
which
can they
I
can
always
do
appreciate.
everything. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I have not to be anything negative. I have another interview in 10 minutes.
Oh, that's no problem at all.
I
But
hope that's okay.
oh yeah, this is totally fine. I actually in the middle of this had to fix something, so luckily I hope it got saved. Otherwise, I'm gonna feel sad. But regardless, I guess to kind of wrap up this episode. So when you're talking about recording a new album, or not recording, but working on it,
Yeah.
any eyes on? Do you plan on working with Jacob again, or do you plan on maybe going to somebody else like you have been
I
so far?
I think we've been very happy to work with each producer we've worked on so far.
Hmm.
But and we've been so, just grateful for the process and the result with Kinship together with Jacob Hansen. So it's absolutely a thing for us at the moment that we talk about. Perhaps we should do that again. Uh, but I also think that it's very natural to us to see what kind of album we're going to make. And when we are beginning, you get at a certain point, you get the more clear sense of, okay, what is this about? What's the nature of this album?
Hmm.
And when we are at that point, I can't promise anything because then there's tons of great producers in the world, and
Oh, absolutely.
I think we will see what this next album just calls for, which kind of sound profile,
Absolutely.
and then we'll decide. The whole journey with ending up with Jacob went through Jens Bogren, where Jens Bogren did an amazing job, but it wasn't the sound we wished to have on Kinship. So we are always trying to explore the whole producer aspect
Yeah.
to as well. So let's see.
I mean, you've worked with three of the best thus far,
Yeah, and
which is,
actually the four, because the first EP was produced by Flemming Rasmussen, who did Ride the
yes.
Lightning
Yep. I almost completely forgot about that.
and Master of Puppets.
My favorite album of all time, Master of Puppets. So
Exactly,
there you go.
exactly. Yeah,
But I would say, like, if there is one producer that I would love to see you guys work with, would
yeah,
be Dan Swano, just because,
yeah.
like,
I
he
knew
can. Yeah, you knew I was going there,
it.
but
Yeah.
because Swano, he just has such an illustrious career. I mean, he doesn't do a whole lot of actual producing, just mixing. But if he could at least mix your stuff, I think it would be
Dan's
insane.
Svanø has been in our thoughts, and we have talked about him both during the Access and the Kinship
Maybe
processes.
third
And
time will be the charm, perhaps.
so I won't leave him out in the cold at all. I really, really love his work. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, anyways, that will do it for
yeah,
episode 84. So we apologize. This was a shorter episode, but yeah, Jesper's got other stuff going on, which is absolutely fine. So
yeah.
maybe a part
Sorry
two
about that. Yeah, we can do
will come
that.
down the road for sure, and we can go further into bands we love and just geek out like we
Yeah,
typically
yeah,
do
yeah.
on this show when it's me and Ricky and other people on here. So of course, I will have links to their Instagram, Bandcamp,
Mhm.
of course, to get the albums off Metal Blade, so on and so forth. And yeah, we can't wait. All of us who are watching or just talking with you look forward to hearing maybe in the next couple of years new album and get our
Yeah,
minds blown once again. So
hopefully. Yeah.
yeah, hopefully, absolutely. But thank you once again for doing this,
Yeah.
and thank you all who are watching this on Wednesday. This is we're recording this on January 20th. It will be out on January 22nd. So thank you all so much
Perfect.
who are watching. So as far as future episodes, well, we do have one episode down the road. We're just not sure when, but we are going to be talking to, speaking of producers that I think could
Yeah.
really make you sound even more gritty, Arthur Risk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna be chatting up some power trips, some eternal
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
champion,
yeah.
blood incantation. That's gonna be a hell of an
That's
episode.
that's that's hard hitting and epic at the same time.
Hmm. So yeah, we'll look forward to be talking to Arthur Risk here, not
I
before
just
too.
actually I just wrote a riff the other day where I told my brother that this riff I'm gonna write tonight is gonna be our power trip riff.
Oh yes,
And
get a little punky thrash out of you.
he really really liked it. So I think that's a good chance we'll end up with some with that riff on the album. Yeah.
Oh, that
I
that'll be
like
fun.
yeah. Power trip is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and rest in peace, Riley. It's
Yeah.
man, I can't believe it's been 5 years, but
Yeah.
but anyway, so once again, thank you all. Thank you, Jesper, for joining me, and thank you all for watching. But until next time, as I always say, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.
Oh yeah. That's a good one.